Okay. Okay. Hello. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. That's usually how I start. Danny here, speaking from California, speaking in English because this is an open session to investors. We typically have multiple investors speaking different languages. So if you're wondering why I don't speak my mother tongue, which is Hebrew, and I see a lot of Israeli names, that's the reason. We're doing this typically every Friday, 11 a.m. Pacific time, California time. An open session for Q&A and discussion about real estate investing. I've been investing for many years, and I want to share that knowledge with you guys. We work with investors on an ongoing basis, helping them invest in real estate, obviously. So the purpose of this session is to engage, is to have to get your questions. Real estate investing, U.S. real estate investing questions. If I know, I will definitely answer. If I don't, I'll let you know that it's not up my expertise. I typically bring a topic that I think interesting to discuss, but questions are always welcome on multiple topics related to real estate investing. Doesn't have to be questions on the topic for today specifically. So let's get started. Today's topic, and feel free to ask questions while I speak. Feel free to ask questions after, if you're watching the listening to the podcast or watching the recording later. You can post questions, no problem. We are streaming this event in 3 ways. So by the time we are done, it's going to be available on Facebook as a recording. It's available on YouTube as a recording, and of course as a podcast as well. So it all goes through those 3 channels, so you can consume the content any way you would like. If you are not sure how to find any one of those channels, just let us know. We will share that information with you. Gladly, we'll share that information with you. Good. Today's topic is about hedging, towards the next downturn, or the next economic slowdown. So let me start by saying, hedging is a very fancy word. My working assumption when I invest in rental properties, mostly in rental properties, or in real estate altogether, is that it's not about when or if we're going to have another downturn. It's all about when that's going to happen. And obviously, I don't know when that's going to happen, but I always have it in the back of my mind. Let me just start by saying that I started investing in 2002. And in 2007 and 8 and 9, we felt the big downturn, the big crash, obviously. So anybody who was involved heavily in real estate, that period did not skip that person. So maybe there are people here who know what I'm talking about, people who just heard about it. I can tell you that I lived through that. Was on one hand, it was not a pleasant time. I can tell you that, not at all. On the other hand, I came out, knowledgeable investor. I came into this period as a knowledgeable investor, and I came out as a much more expert, or much more significant, much more knowledgeable about real estate investing. The downturn of 2008 taught me a lot of things that I had to recalibrate my strategies personally, recalibrate the strategies that I teach investors so they can actually benefit from that terrible period, a really rough patch, long patch of a period, and they can actually avoid that for the future. So we try to make sure things that we've learned, that I learned personally, and things that I've learned by working with other investors throughout that period, we share that back to our community of investors who work with us, so they cannot have the same situation, or increase the chances of not running into the same situation if something like this happens again. Now, are we facing another downturn? I don't know, right? Are we seeing a slowdown? Well, I can think that in some markets around the country, we are seeing, I think, a big acceleration. So that means the rapid growth of real estate prices that we've been seeing, maybe, I don't know the stats, but at least what people are talking about is that if we were speeding at a certain speed, I think we are speeding at a lower speed now. Excuse me. So that means we're not necessarily going into a crash or a downturn, but we're maybe not as moving fast or as rapid as before. So just keep that in mind. By the way, if we are investors and we are seeing, if what I'm saying is correct, and we're seeing a slowdown, that's actually a good thing for us. If we are investors that are buying, it's a good thing. So right now, up until this period, and maybe still is, a lot of the metros, a lot of the markets are behaving in a seller's market mindset. So that means that the sellers have the upper hand. We're still seeing this. I know of at least one property that we were considering this week that had multiple offers. So we are still seeing that. If we are slowing down, we're not, necessarily going down, but slowing down. That may change the seller's mindset and will shift a little bit towards buyer's market. Hopefully, that is good for us if we are buyers. Obviously, that's not necessarily good for us if we are sellers. Now, if we are heading towards, if you are asking yourself, are we going to have a downturn? Where are we going to have a downturn? How dramatic is it going to be? Well, obviously, I'm not going to give you the answers because I don't know those answers, but I can make some decisions along the way how to hedge myself as an investor towards those period of time, right? So first assumption is, and historically speaking, in the United States, every so many years, we have a slowdown in the economy. So we know it's cyclical. So first assumption is, don't assume the market will continue to go at one rate or another. Assume there's going to be a downturn, coming, a slowdown coming in the future. All right, doesn't matter where you are, just assume that's coming. By the way, if you're buying a rental property with a clear purpose to hold it for 10, 15 years, you should assume 1 or 2, 20 years, 1 or 2 periods of time that things will slow down. Now, does it mean a catastrophe? Not necessarily. It could be. It really depends on what you buy, when you bought, how much you pay for it, and all of those things. So let's talk about how to really think about it when you are buying, rental properties. So the first thing is let's make sure we are buying in areas around the country, metros around the country, that we are actually paying for the land and the building and not speculating. So that means, for example, some metros, such as the San Francisco Bay Area, many parts of California, some other parts around the country have been so inflated by prices, right? So we are paying an inflated price for the property, the building, and the land, okay? So let's start by just trying to pay even a market value. A lot of people are always looking to pay below market value, but even if we pay a market value of a property, that's not a perception. This doesn't have to be a perception of an inflated perception of the property. It could be we're paying how much the land worth, how much the property is worth, and not an inflated, price. So let's start by going and buying in markets that are, first of all, not necessarily that expensive, on the lower end, and we're paying for properties really what they're worth. We're not paying for the perception of an inflated value. So that's a good thing. That's a start. Second thing, when we hold properties for multiple years, 10, 15 years, we have a greater chance of hedging throughout the period. So that means if we buy now and in 3 years we see there's a slowdown, right? There's maybe like a valley, and then we're like, oh my God, what have we done? And then the property, even value of my property that I bought for 150 is now worth 130. It's not a good feeling. But if I'm holding it for long term, so that means even if we hit a valley and then we go up, right, over time, or maybe even slowing, the 10 years, 15 years span of time will probably, historically speaking, will show us, an upward movement of appreciation. So that's another thing that we consider. The fact that we're buying long term is probably by itself a type of hedging against, downturn. So that means we can skip, right? I bought a property in 2005 in Orlando. I bought it for $190,000. At the bottom, 2008 or 9, it probably came down to 85. Honestly, it wasn't a fun experience to see your value of the property going down. But But when right now it's probably worth about 200, maybe 210, maybe 220. So it came up eventually. It took some time to do the correction of down and up. But all this period of time, the property was rented, occupied. So that wasn't really a big issue. Actually, during the downturn, we saw an increase or an increase in rents and a decrease of vacancies. So there was a correction on the rental side when the value were going down. The properties, vacancies and rent actually got, the indicators of that got better. So that's actually a good thing to remember. There could be a correction on one end while there is an upward correction on one side while there's a downward correction on another. So going to areas that around the country that are showing, good values for the properties, maybe a little bit undervalued, markets, even market value, and not paying inflated prices. Obviously, we want to make sure the property is cash flowing, even a little bit. When we're buying with a mortgage, when the property is cash flowing, it will be kind of independent of us. So that means whatever happens in our life is not affecting the property, or the property is not affecting us because it has its own independent financial standing. So that's another aspect. Going to areas around the country that are showing growth and projected growth in jobs and population, right? So there's a lot of people who like to go to certain parts of the country because they're cheap. And some parts of those the Midwest and the Northeast, some of those metros are actually, there is a shrinkage of population and jobs. So you're going there may not protect you long term. It may be a good investment short term, but long term, it may not protect you because if the population is shrinking, that may be affecting your buyers pools and renters pool. So going to areas around the country that actually have growth of jobs and population is a good thing as well. Nowadays we're seeing that cash flow is is tighter than before. Paying good cash flow is tighter or harder than before for two main reasons. We've been experiencing an increase in values in the past few years, but not as fast increase in rents. So that's one thing. So obviously there's an erosion of that ratio of purchase price and rent. That's an erosion of that ratio. Second thing, interest rate going up. So that means the cost base is increasing. The cash flow is more tight. How do we mitigate against that? Well, a couple of things. Number one, consider putting 25% down or 30% down on your mortgage, and taking that will give you a little bit better rate, and that will also mean you're borrowing a smaller amount, and that will help with the cash flow. That's one thing. Second thing, remember that there's a very good chance you will not be married to that rate for many, many years. From my experience, in the next 5 to 7 years, you're probably going to refinance that mortgage to a better rate. I don't know the future, but better rate than you have right now. So even if we are using a higher rate at the moment to purchase, the good thing that usually happens when there is a downturn, there is a correction on the interest rate. And when there's a correction on the interest rate, because that's a way to kind of balance the economy, then you will have the opportunity to refinance and get a better rate and lock yourself with a better rate for many more years, and your cash flow will improve. Also remember that rents do tend to keep up, at least with the cost of living, and slowly go up over the years. They're not gonna jump up every year by 5 or 10%, but rents do tend to go up in steps every few years, and over time you will see there is an increase in your cash flow because the rents do tend to go up slowly over time. So all of those things are ways for you to mitigate or hedge against the coming slowdown, if it's coming. I'm not saying it's coming, but I hear people talk about it. I hear people concerning about it. I usually like to bring to those Friday sessions things that people talk about, so we can address it. I know it's in people's mind. Let's have a conversation about it. So I'm not saying there is a slowdown. Someone already asked which markets are slowing down. I don't see that yet because real estate takes time to track trends, and probably September, we're just finishing the summer. Probably September, October will show us the trends of the summers, which should not necessarily show us a slowdown. But what I'm also seeing or hearing is I'm speaking to people, and more that conversation indication of a slowdown is coming up, and people are more concerned about it. And usually there's a correlation between what people are talking about, the mass mindset of people, and then what happens in reality. So I think there's a correlation. Someone asked, am I seeing markets that are slowing down? The answer is no. Am I seeing some of the areas that we used to sell much quicker, properties standing a little bit longer? The answer is yes, but at the same time, we're still in the summer, and we're still seeing multiple offers on properties, or properties moving fast in the markets we are in. So it's maybe a transitional period. It's too early to say. I don't have the data to back it up at the moment. Now, are we looking at another 2008 crash? I don't know. I would say that if the next slowdown would come, it's probably not going to be as horrific for a couple of reasons. First of all, there are a lot of there are more fixed rate mortgages now, or in the past 10 years, since before the first crash. We had many adjustable mortgages before. So better mortgages are being sold, more scrutiny on lending, more conservatism on investors, much more cash transactions. So it seems like it's probably a much healthier lending environment than before the recent crash. So that means if we go into a slowdown, there's probably not going to be as horrific, issues, because in the past 10 years since the crash, a lot of the many improvements and maybe many things were done in order to make sure lending practices are more, let's just say, conservative or cautious or protected for the consumer, and less exposure on that aspect. So to recap everything about hedging, number one, go to markets around the country that the numbers are reflecting good values and good rent, and not inflated prices, right? If a market already been appreciated, tremendously, maybe it's not, a reason to not consider that area. Number two, hold the property long term, 10, 15 years. It will hedge just by holding that long period of time against downturns, right? Number three, there's a possibility that if we're going to see a slowdown, that doesn't mean things are going to necessarily fully crash like 10 years ago. It can just be a slowdown. And in periods of slowdown, many times what you see, there's an increase of rents and decrease of vacancies, which improve our cash flow. So that's another thing to remember. Buying in markets around the country that are showing projected job growth and population growth is very important. So don't be attracted to just the ROI or just the cheap properties just because it's the property is cheap. What is the economical setting around that property? And I'm talking about the metro size. I'm not just talking about the immediate community. All of those, and try to buy with some cash flow, using even a higher down payment of 25 or 30% down instead of 20% down to hedge against the cash flow, to give you a little bit buffer of safety. Those are the main things you can do in order to kind of hedge against the next downturn. And again, I want to emphasize, I'm not saying we are heading into a downturn. I'm not saying it's coming. I don't know if it is. I'm just saying this is more and more I hear people talk about. And when I hear people talk about such topics, I like to bring it on to, bring it to the conversation that we are having together. The whole purpose of this session is to have a conversation with you. Yuval is asking, in which specific market are you seeing a downturn? I am not. Same thing. In which markets are you seeing an emerging buyers market? Emerging buyers market. I am still not seeing that trends. I cannot give you a specific answer because we have not looked at data on emerging buyers in specific markets. Interest rates are going to be higher in few years. Does that go hand in hand with refinancing? You don't know. I don't know if the interest rates are going to be higher, in few years. Interest rate, have a way to match or collaborate or I forgot the word, kind of respond to the economy. If we're going to see if the economy will slow down, there's a very good chance that the Fed will actually lower the interest rate, not increase the interest rate. So we don't know that for a fact. Obviously, if you're locking down a mortgage and the interest rates continue, rate today, a fixed rate today, and the interest rate will continue to go up, we're not going to be, you're not going to refinance. If the economy will slow down and the Feds will correct the rate, then obviously we're going to see you will use that opportunity to get a better rate on your end. So I don't know. I don't have that confidence that interest rate necessarily will continue to go up. It may. I have no idea. Would you advise to wait until summer is over for buying rental properties? No, I would just say, work the market, look for the opportunity. Don't be pressured to buy just because it's a summer, or wait. Keep looking at properties, reviewing them, and then when something that makes sense financially, location, everything, go ahead and buy it. I've never been in a mindset you have to wait or you don't have to wait. You have to do this. There's too many moving parts as it is. I'm just trying to make the best decision, at any given time that I'm ready to buy. There's always opportunities. We just have to know how to work the market in your favor and find the right one for you. Thank you, Yuval. I know you have to leave, so thank you very much for your questions. Let me see if additional questions are coming up. I'll wait for another minute and or so, and if more questions are coming, I'll be happy to take them. Great to see a lot of the names that I know, so thank you for taking time on a Friday. Some of you Friday evening to join, to listen, to participate, to just press likes. I appreciate that. Okay, very good. So thank you for taking the time. This was a short and quick session about how to hedge yourself or prep yourself or make decision towards the next, any future downturn. In order to make better decisions as an investor. You are always welcome to get in touch with us online, through Facebook, through email, through our website, any way that makes sense to you. Our email is our website is simplydoit.net. Our email is meet at simplydoit.net. I know you know our Facebook. You are most welcome to get in touch with us if you want to learn more how we can help you invest, how we can help you to make better decisions regarding investing. We work in multiple states, mostly buying residential rental properties. I want to thank you for taking the time on this Friday. Have a terrific rest of your day. Have a terrific weekend. Thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye, everyone.